as we go through this chapter. If we turn to page 63, we can see, by the end of 62 it says, by the year 1960, she says, people won't need shoes. They'll have wheels instead of feet. Don't you know anything? So what we can see here is that Zelda's imagination is beginning to grow. Last night in the haystack when they first went down and she was distraught, nothing would please her at all and she wouldn't use her imagination. So much so that Felix said, there's nothing worse than an orphan with no imagination. We see that she's starting to get into his stories and using imagination herself. One of these poor Jewish ladies, elderly ladies, collapses on the road. I tell her that the lady is just having a rest and we've gone. And after we've gone, a farmer will come and take the lady home and she'll live happily on the farm with his family and become very good at milking cows. And in the year 1972, she'll invent a machine that makes milk then automatically and also makes butter. Zelda thinks about this. In 1972, says Zelda, cows will make their own butter. Don't you know anything? So we can see that her sense of humour is beginning to grow as a result of being around Felix. That is used is allusions. We've spoken about allusions before. Alluding to something outside of the book. That can be a historical figure or a historical event, or it can be another text, intertextual, referencing another text. Here we have Felix alluding to historical figures and historical events. So he's talking about rags in his feet, in his shoes, and he says to Zelda, all the great travellers in history had rags around their feet, I say. Christopher Columbus, who discovered America, so he discovered America in 1492 in a Spanish fleet that came out that way. He believed that he was in East Asia, but actually discovered the Americas. Dr. Livingstone was born in 1813. He was a missionary from the Congregationalist Church, and he went to Africa, one of the first Christian missionaries to go to Africa. He's also famous for his discoveries. He discovered Victoria Falls and a lot of different parts of Africa in search of the beginning of the Nile River. So he's very famous for his exploration. He's very famous for his role in stopping slavery or halting slavery from Africa. And he's famous as a Christian minister as well. The last one, Hannibal the Great, he did too, so did his elephants. Now, Hannibal the Great, Hannibal Barca, came from Carthage in North Africa, and he grew up in a family, Carthagins, who were dedicated to fight their enemy, the Roman Empire. And we're talking about 220 years before Christ. Now, Hannibal did almost the unimaginable. His military tactics are still studied today. He dragged 30-odd elephants, thousands of troops, and horses and cavalry riders over the Alps in Europe to invade Italy and take the fight to Rome. What do these three people have in common? They're all travellers. And as they are travelling along the road towards Warsaw, he's sharing other travellers as well. And those are important allusions to note. Next, we want to have a look at this little formula prayer that he has. You pray to God, Jesus, the Virgin Mary, the Pope, and Adolf Hitler. That's quite a list of people to pray to. And it's becoming more and more apparent that Adolf Hitler isn't someone to be prayed to at all. And he's still ignorant of that fact, so that creates dramatic irony. If we turn to page 64, we see, why would the Nazis make people suffer like this just for the sake of some books? Now, we know that the Nazis are not making people suffer like this because of books. They're making people suffer because they're anti-Semitic. They are Jew haters. So it's not some books. So we have another example of dramatic irony right here. The reader understands that Nazis hate the Jews, but Felix doesn't understand that yet. So we have dramatic irony occurring. One of the main themes that are occurring in chapter 7 is the idea of identity. What is Felix's identity? Plus, what does it mean to be Jewish, and how is that related to his identity? And then as he sees firsthand all these Jewish people, people of his race and his nation, people to whom he identifies with, as he sees all these people walking down the road and becomes one of them, we have a powerful experience of what it means to be Jewish and what it means to be hated. So this section here, right at the end of the chapter, where it asks profound statements, not just because I've made a suffering Jewish man feel upset at the sight of a crazy kid, also because I've got a horrible suspicion I know the answer to my question. Maybe it's not just our books the Nazis hate. Maybe it is us. So the gradual realization that culminates at the end of the chapter of the horror of anti-Semitism. His Jewish identity means that he's hated. He's hated because of who he is. Another theme that is emerging is family and friends. He's on a quest. He's on a mission to find his family. This is closely linked with identity because part of your identity is where you come from. He also creates friendship around his search for his family. So this friendship with Zelda is an important theme that emerges. So we have not only family, we have friendships. We also have the juxtaposition of kindness and hatred. So just like we saw in other chapters with Mr. Kopek showing kindness and Mr. Ratzin showing hatred, we see hatred towards Jewish people here. And we see small elements of kindness or the attempt to be kind, particularly Felix towards Zelda. And we're confronted with the impossibility of helping everyone. Although Felix wants to help everyone, this is an impossibility, and he has to accept that.